The desert sun blazes down on the cockpit of a Messerschmitt Bf 109. The heat is suffocating, the air thick with dust. At 20,000 feet, a formation of enemy fighters closes in. Most pilots would hold formation, steady their nerves, and wait for orders. Hans-Joachim Marseille was not like most pilots. He broke from formation, dived alone into the mass of enemy aircraft, and within seconds, the desert sky lit up with fire and falling machines. His aim was precise, his movements impossible to follow. For Marseille, this chaos was a stage, and he was the star performer. By the end of his short career, he had destroyed 158 Allied aircraft, almost all against skilled Western pilots. He became known as the Star of Africa. But his story is more than statistics. It is the story of a young man who defied the rules of air combat, who fought with instinct and flair, and who carried himself with an unusual sense of honor. This is the life, the battles, and the legend of Hans-Joachim Marseille. Hans-Joachim Marseille was born in Berlin in 1919. From the beginning, he was different. He was flamboyant, rebellious, and far more interested in music, dancing, and women than in military discipline. When he joined the Luftwaffe in 1938, instructors quickly recognized his raw talent. He could throw a fighter into impossible aerobatics, but he ignored formation orders, often wandering off to do things his own way. Commanders called him careless. Fellow cadets called him brilliant. His first taste of combat came during the Battle of Britain in 1940. Marseille was reckless, undisciplined, and often returned to base with a damaged aircraft. His gunnery was poor, his kill record unimpressive. Some superiors considered grounding him permanently. One even said, "Marseille will either be a disaster or a genius." In late 1941, his career took a dramatic turn. He was transferred to Jagdgeschwader 27, a Luftwaffe fighter wing in North Africa. And it was here, under the command of Edward Neumann, that Marseille's talent finally found its stage. Neumann allowed him to fly with greater freedom, trusting that Marseille's unorthodox instincts could succeed in the vast open skies of the desert. North Africa was one of the most unforgiving arenas of the Second World War. Endless deserts stretched across Libya and Egypt. Supply lines were long and fragile. Dust-clogged engines, heat-strained pilots, and sudden sandstorms could turn battles into chaos. By 1941 and 1942, Rommel's Afrika Korps and the British 8th Army were locked in a seesaw struggle. Air power was critical. Whoever controlled the skies could strike convoys, harass advancing troops, and protect their own supply lines. For the Luftwaffe, this role fell to Jagdgeschwader 27, equipped with the Messerschmitt Bf 109, and among them, a 22-year-old pilot named Hans-Joachim Marseille began to rise. The Bf 109F was Marseille's favorite mount. Lighter and more aerodynamic than its predecessors, it gave him the agility he needed for his lightning-fast maneuvers. Its Daimler-Benz DB601 engine offered speed and climb rate superior to the rugged but heavier British Hurricanes and Kitty Hawks. Against the nimble Spitfire, the 109F was evenly matched, but in Marseille's hands, it seemed untouchable. Where others saw danger, Marseille saw opportunity. German doctrine emphasized strict formation flying, but Marseille often broke away, climbing high above enemy formations before plunging down like a hawk. He slipped into enemy groups from unexpected angles, fired at point-blank range, then vanished before anyone could react. On February 20th, 1942, Marseille intercepted South African Kitty Hawks near Gazala. His wingmen tried to follow, but could not keep pace. Marseille danced through the formation, firing short, deadly bursts. By the end of the fight, 6 Allied aircraft were falling into the desert. His comrades described his movements as impossible to track. He was everywhere at once. Through the spring of 1942, Marseille's reputation grew. The Battle of Gazala in May and June saw daily air clashes. While Rommel struck toward Tobruk on the ground, Marseille dominated above. On June 6th, he destroyed 7 Allied fighters in one day. Allied pilots began to recognize the yellow nose of his Bf 109 and knew they faced the Luftwaffe's deadliest marksman. By August, as Rommel advanced into Egypt, Marseille was at his peak. Every sortie seemed to end with multiple victories. His tactics broke every rule, but they worked. Marseille's legend rests on the battles he fought in the summer and autumn of 1942, battles that turned him from a gifted pilot into a legend. On June 17, 1942, Marseille's Staffel faced 15 Allied fighters. Diving from above, he weaved through the formation with impossible agility. In mere minutes, 6 aircraft were destroyed. His wingmen admitted they could barely comprehend what they were seeing. On July 3rd, while escorting Stuka dive bombers, Marseille encountered a large group of British Hurricanes. Instead of waiting for support, he dove in head first. In short succession, 6 Hurricanes had fallen. His bursts were so short and precise that his ammunition count at landing was almost full, proof of his deadly accuracy. August brought more astonishing feats. During the battle for El Alamein, Marseille flew up to 5 sorties a day. On August 30th, he scored 7 victories. The very next day, on September 1st, 1942, he reached immortality. That morning, Marseille took off in his familiar Bf 109. By the time he landed, he had downed 5 enemy aircraft. In his second mission, another 7, and in his third, 5 more. In just one day, he had destroyed 17 Allied fighters. His comrades at first could not believe it, but every claim was verified by witnesses, and Allied records later confirmed the losses. It remains one of the greatest single-day performances by any fighter pilot in history. Just days later, on September 6th, Marseille claimed another 7 victories. His tally soared past 150. He was awarded the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds, the Luftwaffe's highest honor. Yet he wore it with the casual ease of a man who never cared much for medals. Marseille also stood out for his unusual sense of honor. He never fired on parachuting pilots. More than once, he circled above a downed opponent to ensure he landed safely. After one combat, he flew alongside a South African pilot he had just shot down, saluted him, and then turned away. His enemies respected him. His comrades admired him. The desert knew his name. Marseille was known as a fearless fighter in the skies, but on the ground, he often revealed a very different side, one defined by compassion, respect, and, in rare cases, friendship across enemy lines. One of the most remarkable examples was his friendship with Matthew Matthias Letuku, a black South African soldier captured by the Germans and assigned as a prisoner of war helper at Marseille's base. Unlike many officers of the era, Marseille treated Letuku not as a servant, but as a companion. He shared meals with him, played music in his company, and spoke openly of his admiration for his dignity and humor. The two developed a genuine friendship, something almost unheard of in the rigid racial divisions of the 1940s. Letuku would later recall how Marseille insisted he be treated with respect by other German soldiers, stepping in personally when anyone attempted to demean him. For Marseille, humanity came before politics, before ideology. It was another sign of how he quietly distanced himself from the world view. Marseille's sense of honor extended to his enemies in the sky as well. On several occasions, after shooting down Allied aircraft, he circled low to ensure the pilot had landed safely, sometimes even dropping supplies or water. Once, after an opponent's death, he flew over an enemy airfield and dropped a letter informing them of the loss, a gesture of respect. so the man's comrades would know what had happened. He also arranged for funeral honors for fallen opponents. When British or South African pilots were killed in combat, Marseille sometimes stood at attention during their burial, saluting them as worthy adversaries. His comrades later remembered these moments as deeply moving, reminders that even in the bloodiest of conflicts, respect between warriors could still exist. These stories added to the growing mystique of Hans-Joachim Marseille. To his enemies, he was a deadly opponent, but to those who looked closer, he was also a man of empathy, unwilling to let war strip him of his humanity. Away from the cockpit, Marseille lived as flamboyantly as he flew. He played piano at officers' gatherings, sang songs, and danced long into the night. He was a notorious womanizer, charming and charismatic. His comrades called him both inspiring and exasperating. He was also unusual among German officers in his open criticism of the Third Reich. He fought for Germany, not for Adolf. Rommel himself admired Marseille's skill, but also recognized his independent streak. Then came the end. On September 30th, 1942, while returning from a mission, his Bf 109G caught fire in mid-air. Marseille guided the burning plane away from his squadron and bailed out. But as he leapt, he struck the tail of his aircraft. His parachute never opened. The Star of Africa was gone, dead at only 22 years old. Hans-Joachim Marseille destroyed 158 enemy aircraft, all but 7 against Western pilots. His skill, his instinct, and his refusal to fight conventionally made him one of the most remarkable fighter aces of the Second World War. The sheer number of claimed kills is impressive, even when factoring in exaggeration common to wartime reports, but his legacy is not just in victories. It is in the way he lived, flamboyant, independent, honorable, even in war. He was a soldier who saluted his enemies, a man who criticized the ideology he served under, and a genius who burned bright and fast. When you picture the desert skies of North Africa, imagine the yellow-nosed Messerschmitt darting across the horizon. Imagine the young man who broke the rules and rewrote the book of air combat. That was Hans-Joachim Marseille, the Star of Africa. Thanks for watching. If you want more forgotten stories from World War II, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. There's more history to uncover. See you next time.